And now, since it's been a while since I've done this for the last time, it's time for a little metagame check. And I wanted to talk about, of course, the news of Latias' banning to Ubers, as well as the upcoming test on Salamence. But first, there was something I wanted to bring up for a while now, and I haven't had much of a chance to do it since there was always something... No thank you, I'm gonna pass on Rain Dance. But yeah, there was always something that got in the way, so I just wanted to bring up something about the current Uber metagame. You may remember that in Hard Gold and Soul Silver, who obtained the Brave Bird, and it looks like I've reached that part of Route 123, which I had already explored, so I'm just gonna drop in and get 2 berries from this guy. He gives you 2 berries every day, but of course I don't go there every day because I don't really need the berries. But anyway, I'm just picking those up because I'm in the area, and yeah, hey, it's free stuff, so I can't complain. So now that the upper path has been done on Route 123, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna fly back to Lily Cove, just heal my Milotic since it doesn't have too much PP left, and after that I'm going to take the low road, fight the trainers there, get the items there, and after that it's off to Mount Pyre. So I think I was talking about how Who got Brave Bird in Hard Gold and Soul Silver, and as a result, and I believe I told you already, its usage spiked immensely because of that. Well, turns out that this spike subsided a little bit, because let's face it, even with Brave Bird, Who was fundamentally flawed in terms of design from the get-go. Because look at that special defense, 154, but a fire flying type like Who normally would be all about offense, doesn't need so much freaking special defense. Give it speed, give it attack, give it anything but freaking special defense. Though I guess it can come in handy at times. Points in defense are never truly wasted, but they still would have been much better used in attack or speed. And that's not all, because with Who's drop in usage, well, Lugia became more popular early on in the year, especially in January and February. So the period of time where Lugia was less commonly used than Who lasted something like 3 months. Didn't last very long. And of course, Lugia has some problems of its own, namely that it's supposed to be a really defensive Pokemon, yet its typing doesn't lend itself that much to defense. Nonetheless, it's still a pretty great Pokemon, better designed from the get-go than Who was, so I'm not really surprised that the cream would rise to the top. It always does. But today's main course is, of course, the news of Latias' rebanning and Salamance's own round of suspect testing. And first, let's begin with Latias. To be honest, I was really surprised at first that it would be sent back to Ubers, because after all, if you remember the early rounds of voting in Stage 3 testing, Latias was nearly unanimously voted as overused. But what I think happened, and I may be wrong because I'm nowhere near as good at that stuff as some of the people on Smogon, but what I think happened is that, well, the suspects, they kept getting knocked off one by one and sent back to Ubers. So Latias became more and more powerful as some of the potential problems that it could meet were sent away off the ladder. So it became better and better, and as such, eventually, it was sent into Ubers itself, kind of like a domino effect. And I'll be honest, this was one of the worries that I had from the moment Stage 3 was announced, that certain Pokemon's tiering would end up being dependent on another Pokemon's tiering. And that turns out to be probably what happened according to my own interpretation of things. And whoa, a Pelipper? Well, I guess it would be a waste of time to switch, and it's raining, so I guess I could go try and surf it, see what it gives. Curious to see how much damage I'll do. Oh! Killed it with a critical! Well, that was a timely critical. You know how criticals usually never happen when you want them to? Well, that's not really the case for me. Let's Players curse? What Let's Players curse again? But back to this whole Latias deal. Yeah, it's sent back to Ubers. I found it a little awkward that Latias was overused and Latios would be Uber, but I guess now the matter has been resolved. They're both going to stay Uber for a while. I'm not sure how long they will stay Uber because Black and White are going to come out in a matter of months. And of course with Black and White you're going to get a lot of new Pokemon, a lot of new moves, a lot of old Pokemon getting new moves, and all that kind of stuff. So it's really impossible to tell what effect Black and White will have on the metagame, but one thing's for certain, and that's we're going to have this debate again. If it's not next year, it's going to be in 2012. And as for Salamence, I mentioned it before, it's going to have a suspect test of its own. It's going to work differently from the other suspect tests that they've had until now, but I'm not good enough to understand all the differences, so I'll just leave it to the more competent players than me to decide if it's Uber or not. And while I'm on the subject, I just wanted to bring up the fact that, well, my viewership has increased a lot since the last time I did one of those little metagame analysis things, and among them, a lot of people that came from Chugconroy's channel, and some of them might be of a lower age than what I usually cater to for that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to tell you this. Some of you might be thinking, oh, Salamence is no problem, I can kill it in one hit with my Blastoise. Well, taking down your 10-year-old friend Salamence is one thing, but taking out a Smogonite Salamence is another entirely. And it's been said for several months now that outside of the Stage 3 suspect, that Salamence was probably the most likely candidate for a suspect test, even ahead of Scizor, because as ubiquitous as Scizor is, there are still ways to deal with it. Salamence is a lot harder to deal with, because you really have to pack a lot of stuff on your team to be able to handle it. We're basically at the same point now with Salamence as we were at with Garchomp before it was banned. And I'm going to make a bold prediction right now. Salamence is flying his last miles in the overused tier for quite a while, and I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of effect it'll have on Dragonite, because when Garchomp was banned, to say Flygon was banned is the understatement of the year. And so one can expect that Dragonite will get the same kind of help. Maybe not as sharp and increased because Flygon was completely irrelevant, whereas Dragonite still has a certain degree of relevance. And that Salamence test may have been hastened by Latias' banning, because it's no secret that Latias and Salamence didn't like each other very much, so they kept each other in sort of a state of a very delicate balance that left both on the outskirts of Uberdom. But the moment one of them goes and it was decided that Latias would be the one to go, then the other one would be free to rampage as they please, and so Salamence is getting tested and is probably going to go away. So now that I'm done with Route 123, I'm going to heal my Milotic. Again, I apologize for this little downtime of Uber boredom, and I'm also going to put some items in the PC because there are lots of loot to be obtained at Mount Pyre, so I'm just going to deposit XP share, both PP ups, rare candy, AK Super Repel, calcium, revival herb, and I guess we're good to go. There's going to be enough room in the bag for everything. And as I was saying, the test that's going to happen on Salamence is, well, maybe Latias' ban isn't fully responsible for that, but it's at least in part responsible for that, because remember that domino effect that I mentioned early on in the video where, the other suspects kept getting knocked off to make more room for Latias? Well, this is pretty much the same thing, because now Latias is gone and Salamence has an easier time dominating. So that's going to be it for this weekend. 8 videos in 3 days, never gonna happen again, let me tell you that.